Hi everyone, welcome to my latest revision video. Today our video is about making a revision timetable. Whether you're doing your GCSEs or your A-levels or your BTECs, it's really important to have a revision timetable, especially with the holidays coming up before our January exams. So the first thing to think about is, what is a revision timetable? Because a lot of people go and they get one and they actually just get given one and they don't know what it is and what it's for. So it needs to do these things. The first thing it needs to do is it needs to plan what you revise. And by that, I mean the subjects you revise, the topics you revise, and also in many cases, the skills you revise. So by subjects, it's things like geography, RE, maths, English, French, whatever you're studying. You have to cover all your subjects. Second thing is the topics inside those subjects. So thinking of GCSEs, you might have the Tudors, that's for history. You might have characters in Animal Farm for English literature. You might have water tables in geography. They're the things that you have lessons on are your topics. You will know which topics relate to which exams, and if you don't, before you do your revision timetable, just check with your teacher or look on Firefly. The third thing is skills. So skills are things you can't learn off by heart, and they're the things where people will say, well, you can't revise for it, but you can. So some examples of skills are drawing accurate diagrams. You need to practice that. If your diagrams or your graphs always look a bit messy, you just need to practice it doing over and over and over again until you can. Planning an essay when it's timed. Lots of people can write an essay in class fine. They go in the exam, they run out of time because they haven't planned. So practice writing timed essays and doing plans very quickly. Analysing evidence, so making sure that you've practiced that skill of noticing, using inference words, using evaluative words like to what extent and that kind of thing. Or skills like calculating volume. And these skills, the way you tend to revise them is by doing them slowly and then quicker and quicker and quicker, or doing them with easy case studies or easy levels of numbers and then getting more and more complicated. They're more practicing, but that's still a kind of revising. The other thing a revision timetable does is you need to plan when you revise, so how often you revise and for how long. And you have to take your life into account. So if you know that you always, for example, have a football club at a certain time on a Tuesday, you can't revise then. But then you might have to make sacrifices of a time when you'd normally watch telly in order to make up that time. So you need to look at your life realistically and think, when will I revise? So before you start to revise, you're going to need some paper, because you need to have some paper for this. You either plan your revision online using an online tool, which I'll show you some in a minute, and I'll link to them in the comments, or you can create a revision timetable using gridded paper, using check paper. I recommend that you make one out of paper simply because you can't turn off paper. So on a day when you're thinking, oh, I can just pretend it doesn't exist, you can pretend one that's online doesn't exist simply by not opening that file. But you can't ignore a big poster on your bedroom wall, or you can't ignore something that's right there in the middle of your revision guide. So have both. If you do them online, print one out and stick it up. Maybe print a couple out, have one in your bag and one at home. Your general revision guide has space for doing this as well. So you could make your revision guide in your paper revision guide that you have been given by your year team. The other thing that you need is a notebook, because every time you put in a revision session, as you'll see from the examples we're showing, it might just say a subject or a topic, but you might want to do something specific within that. So you might say Animal Farm, but inside Animal Farm, you're actually wanting to revise the character of Napoleon or the character of Benjamin. So you need a notebook just to make a more detailed list of what you're going to do each session. So think about how it works at school. You might have a timetable and it might say, I've got English, then geography, then PE. But then when you go to each of those subjects, you'll do one particular skill that day. So that's what you want to do in your revision timetable. You'll say what subject you're doing, and then in a more detailed notebook, you'll have the actual topic that you're doing. So you need both parts. So once you've decided, am I going to make it online and print it out, or am I going to make it physically out of paper? And if you do that, pin it to your wall, keep it somewhere safe. If you're going to carry it around with you, get a photocopy of it, you don't want to lose it, then you're ready to start. So the first step is not actually starting to write, it's not actually getting all the highlighters out and colour coding. It's being really honest with yourself. Some things you will already be really good at, some things you need to take some more steps in. So write down a list of all the subjects and topics you're doing. So you'll write down all your subjects and then next to them your topics. So for example, if you were doing English literature, just because that's what I do with my GCSE group, I'm thinking you'd write down English literature, you'd write down Animal Farm, you'd write down Macbeth, you'd write down poetry, you'd write down unseen poetry, you'd write down Frankenstein, and you would have all of your texts there. And then you know that's what you've got to do. The next thing you've got to do is, with honesty, looking back over your exercise books and any assessments that you have done, you need to think, okay, are there any parts of this that I need to do a bit more revision for? Are there any parts of this that are more complicated? And also, which bits are worth the most marks? So you know, for example, with English literature GCSE, that the unseen poetry is not worth as much as some of the other elements, particularly not comparing unseen poetry. So although that's quite a hard skill, you don't want to spend all your time revising for an 8-mark question comparing unseen poems when you have questions that are worth 34 marks, such as Animal Farm and such as Macbeth, 34 marks. So you're going to say, right, maybe I didn't do so well in my Animal Farm practice exam. And that's worth 34 marks, so I must spend a lot of time on that. But I'm very confident with Macbeth, and I did quite well there. I will still revise, never cut anything out and just be like, yeah, it's okay. Always revise. But I might particularly focus on my skills for Animal Farm. You might also notice in a subject that there are certain skills. So if you always forget to use evidence, or you always forget to show you're working out, you might want to use that as a focus for revision. So go through your exercise books and look, what are the things that I need to revise the most for, and what are the things that are worth the most marks? Don't ever cut anything out. Just like a personal word of warning from me is that I once did that on an assessment when I was doing my GCSEs, and it was a geography assessment, and I got a lower grade than I expected. And it was actually because I was really good at that topic, and I got complacent, I got too relaxed, and I didn't really revise, and then I was disappointed. So make sure you do revise for every single module that you need to do, but make sure that you're realistic. Some of them you might need to do a bit of extra for, some of them you just might need to maintain your memory that you know already. Once you know what your most important topics are, which ones you really need to focus on, which ones you still need to revise for, but maybe they're not ones that you're worried about, you're ready to start writing it down. So I'm going to show you some examples of free online resources that I'll link to at the bottom of the video. So this revision timetable, this I think comes from Sussex University. It's completely blank. It's just showing you a whole day's timetable. And at the bottom, I think it's got some wise advice. If you pause this video, if you want to read it, it's like, don't be over ambitious. Don't try and do a whole day of one subject and ace it in one day. Go through and focus on doing maybe an hour here and an hour there. And look, it says take 45-minute sessions and include fun stuff and rewards. Don't try and just work all the way through. You'll burn out. Your memory will burn out, just like your muscles. If you tried to run a marathon when you'd only ever run 5 kilometers in the past, you'd burn out, you'd injure yourself. It's the same with your brain. You need to just keep going in small steps and you will get there eventually. It's not a race. Yeah? Everyone sits the exam at the same time. If you start now, just before Christmas, and you do 45 minutes regularly with some breaks, you'll cover everything in good time. So here, you can see it's been filled in a bit, and you can see they've colour-coded it. Now, they've written it very generically, subject 1, subject 2, subject 3. So it goes up to 5 here. And you can see they've put in some breaks. And they've made theirs, this is for holiday time, they've made theirs kind of like a school day because they've got a break time and a lunch time and so on. If you want to, you can do that. If you're doing a timetable for when you're at school, obviously you're going to have nothing down here. You might come home, have 20 minutes to unwind, then do some revision, then have your dinner, then maybe use some quiz cards, then watch some TV and go to bed. We're not saying that you have to live like a robot. So you adapt this, and if you're at school, it's a school day. This bit is school blanked out. And if you're on holiday, make sure that you map in your breaks. And here you've got free time because on Saturday and Sunday, you do need some time to do sport or watch something on telly or read a book or something relaxing. This is another one. And you'll notice again that I have circled straight away. This is an online tool and I'll link to it. That they've mapped in plenty of free time, and they've mapped in here, it says Sarah's birthday. They've put in fun things. Yeah, it's really important to make sure that you don't burn out. But equally, some days they're pretty intensive. So here they're pretty intensive, here they're more relaxed, and that's absolutely fine. Now, you've got your revision timetable, and look here, there's a subject. It says English literature. So what do you do with your notepad? With your notepad, you need to think, right, I've got an hour's revision time. What am I going to do? You might not plan it all at once at the start. You might kind of do it the day before. You might do it the week before. But this is where you look in your strengths and weaknesses. Think about how you're going to revise. Mix it up. Don't spend the whole day staring at a screen or staring at a book or writing essays. Do one session on the computer, one with quiz cards, one writing an essay, one using your revision guide books. Keep going, variety helps you remember. So this person has thought, I've got to revise my English A-level. And I'm going to look at this. I'm going to, first of all, start with 10 minutes of memory testing myself with some cards, and I'm going to do interleaving. That means more than one topic. So I'm going to get all my books cards out and just do lots of quiz cards just to refresh my memory. Then I'm going to do a 50-minute session on the skill of comparing poetry. So any of you who are looking to do GCSE and wondering, do I still have to compare at A-level? Yes, you do. I'm going to do, and I know that I don't balance my comparisons, so I'm going to do what I always do, and I'm going to make sure that I'm writing these paragraphs and these essays and making sure that I balance my comparisons, because I always write more about one poem than another, and that's my weak point. And so I've written a little checklist for myself, and that's what I'm going to work on. So you can see that adds up to an hour, but it's not just staring at a revision guide or staring at a computer screen. I've got 10 minutes on my quiz cards, and I've got 10 minutes actually practicing writing, and I've got a little checklist where I'm going to say where I've gone. It's impossible to do that kind of, it's almost like lesson planning, way in advance. But at the start of a week or every few days, you can look at what you're revising over the next few days and plan it. Don't just go in and say, oh, I'm going to plan English, because you might get to like June and realise that you've only actually revised one book because you always just pull out the first book and read that. Or I'm going to revise maths, and you always just revise chapter 1 of your textbook. Make sure that you're deciding what topics you're going to do and mixing it up a bit. And the final thing, I keep saying it, make sure that you put in check-offs where you can tick and say, yeah, I've done that. I'm pleased I've done that. I know I did what I set out to do. Make sure you put in rests and also plan rewards for yourself. So on one of those, they said, it said lunch with Izzy, I think. So yeah, go and meet your friends. Have a time when you're going to relax. You're going to play on your computer. You're going to watch a movie. You're going to have a treat. Make sure that you take it one step at a time. By starting now and just not overstretching yourself, just working regularly, you'll be fine. It's small steps, one at a time. And remember that the school has lots of things to help you with stress. So my final thing is, if you do start to get too worried, don't forget, tell someone. We've got plenty of people. We've all been through it, all of your teachers and your other staff. They've all been through it, and they can all help you. And make sure that start now, take small steps, and you won't get stressed. Thank you very much, and do come and find me if you need anything else.